What was your final, UCKU, to a boss you didn't like? Mechanic at a commuter airline. Boss wanted me to sign off a plane pre-flight inspection. I refused to sign because the plane was not airworthy. He told me if I wished to continue working, then I'd better sign. My response: then I guess I don't work here anymore. I picked up my toolbox and left. My exit interview, when I was asked the reason for leaving, I simply said their name and nothing more. I was a program director developing and piloting a new program, and after a year of being overloaded and telling our exec director I either needed a second person or a smaller caseload, he pulls me into his office and goes, "We don't really think you're a good fit for this position, but you're a bright young lady and we'd hate to lose you. Giving you the option to stay and be my secretary. You have until 7 a.m. tomorrow to decide." I took an early lunch, walked to my other job, asked if I could take on more hours, walked back, and told him he had found other employment and would have my stuff cleared out by noon. He asked if I could stay 2 more weeks to train a new person, and I told him no. "What if we paid you a consultation fee?" "No. You're the only person in the county certified. Should have thought of that earlier." Bonus. This was in the middle of an audit, where it was discovered that he owed me about $3,000 from unpaid hours. I like to call it my leaving bonus. I was thinking about quitting but was holding back. I scheduled a vacation with 3 extra days. It was a once-in-a-lifetime type of trip. He rejected my vacation request. I thought about it for a couple of hours. Went to his office and told him, "I'm taking the trip no matter what." The next morning the boss met me at hour and gave me a formal written warning. I responded by giving him my 2-week notice. They apologized and tried to convince me not to leave, but it was too late. I gave him a 2-hour notice when I quit. He had a habit of firing people on the spot when they gave advance notice. Applied for a full-time job at a daycare. Interview was on Friday and the director said she would text me over the weekend to tell my hours for next week. Yay! I got the job. Monday rolls around and no text or email from her, so I am sitting in my PJs at home thinking I'm out of work. At 10 a.m. a random number calls me, asks me to come in for 11. I let it slide thinking she lost track of time or whatever. By the end of the day I asked for my schedule and she said she'll contact me tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. The next day is the same thing, except this time she calls at 11 a.m. asking to come in for 11:15. I waited 2 hours for her call. Now I have no car and live 15 minutes away. On top of this, the were only 4-ish hours long, so the job isn't even full-time. I tell her I need a schedule by the end of the day. Didn't get one. The next day she calls at a random time, but too late. I'm busy at an interview with a different job. I tell her I'll stop in to get my check by the end of the week because she can't respect my time and lied on the ad about being full-time. I am not getting paid to be on call. I quit. They begged, so I agreed to stay while they hired someone for me to train up. I figured it might be a month or two. The local talent pool was not a deep one. Months pass, no interviewees, and I asked coworkers if they'd seen people being interviewed for my spot, and it turns out no one was being interviewed for it. I don't know what possessed management to disregard the gift I had offered, but long story short, I quit that Friday with no further warning, sent the email at end of day, and I guarantee that ruined several people's weekends. Probably right up to the CIO level, since he was the one who convinced me to stay on, while they hired a replacement. Scroll forward a year, and they had hired 3 people to try to keep up with the workload I was managing. We're still falling behind with lower quality work. Various departments were at management, and the coworkers I knew from the place had been told by management to ask me if I'd come back, if they ran into me in town. A few folks did run into me, obviously, which is how I found all that out. We had a good laugh. Edit. Wow, this blew up. Lol, I've mentioned this story before on Reddit, I think. I should farm it for karma every few years. But seriously, UCK that company. Headaches going into the office every day, endless stress with no appreciation right up until I told them I was walking. Folks, if you ever have a job and do it well, the only appreciation that matters is your pay. Them giving you endless kudos is just the HR version of likes and prayers and doesn't even show up on your LinkedIn. I forgot my name tag at my 2nd or 3rd day at work at a supermarket. The manager, Damien, asks where the name tag was and I was honest, I forgot it. He says to me, "How about I forget to pay you?" I wanted to tell him off but needed the job. It was casual hours, but they started giving me more and more when they saw how efficient I was. I had a few run-ins with the guy over a couple months. He was one of those short guys that had a complex about it. drove a powerful car, belittled people and was just a piece of hit. Eventually I found full-time work, so one day I walk in, resigned on the spot and walked out. Boot, it was a weekend and he wasn't there. It was right before Christmas. For some reason that night I get a call from the store asking me to come in to cover a shift the next morning, and I mentioned I had quit. They had no one else to do it and said why not one last shift. I said no and hung up. About 5 minutes later I got a call from Damien asking me to do the coverage. I repeated to him that I had quit and he repeated that he needed the coverage and he'd see me in the morning. I said, "UCKU," and hung up. He called me back and said that I can't say that and HR will be having a word with me. So I said, *UCK offshore test, and blocked his number. Thankfully the new job worked out and I never needed that Damien idiot for a reference. I worked hard over the course of a year to get all my former coworkers I cared about new jobs. My boss and I had butted heads a few times after she took over the office. After finding a much better job I handed her a list of my job responsibilities, which she asked for because she didn't understand what I did there. "This is too much. We'd have to distribute all Thisto like 4 different people," and I said, "Yay," and walked out. Spoiler. She didn't do any of that and was fired less than a year later as the office was falling apart. Sent them to the feds for Medicare fraud and they got fined $41.7 million. Salary was delayed by 2 weeks and was about told to be lenient because the company is growing and needs our help and cooperation. I waited for another week but I was ignored. I left the job without notice and upon them calling me to sue me, I replied, "You have money to sue people but no money to pay employees." I switched job and I am at a better place right now. I taped a piece of fish to the back of his desk which was up against a wall. I heard later on that it wasn't found for almost a month. UCKU Darren. When I left, he promised to take half what I was making and spread it among the team as raises to cover the extra work. He was trying to stop the exodus as I was the 3rd person to leave in a short time. So when I left I handed my pay stub, minus social security info, to the team and said, "Greater than just in case he tried to lie. This is what I make." He tried to lie. They also realized they were being underpaid by a good chunk. He told me that was a breach of confidential information and they could sue me. I told him to sue me then. Never heard from that company again except for tax docs. For those unfamiliar, in the US you are legally allowed to disclose your own pay. And it's illegal for your employer to tell you that you can't. I am assuming if he did try that HR or the lawyers quickly corrected him before they had to hand me a settlement. Well, I mean, it was an actual UCKU. He had just realized he was getting terminated for some pretty egregious safety-related ignorance that I and several others had reported. He was going through that sob story period while HR was investigating and came in for his shift one day and HR had accidentally terminated him early, which he found out trying to use our work portal and his logins didn't work for anything. So while he's sob-storying me, he was unaware of who had reported him. I basically go, "So this is your last day?" "Yeah man. I'm terminated in the system." "Wow. That sucks for you. I just want to take this opportunity to tell you, UCKU, and *UCK, you for endangering our safety here. You were, by far, the worst manager I have ever seen." And then I just walked away. I'm a commercial construction superintendent. I couldn't get the support needed from our PMs and had been thrown under the bus for several deficiencies that I had pointed out early in the project, all of which were ignored. My 30 years of experience meant nothing against their 3 to 5 years in the industry. I was tasked with developing a safety program that was never enforced or followed, as well. 3 sites were nailed by OSHA. I got the blame for that as well. One evening, on a whim, I restored my laptop, tablet, and phone to factory settings. The next morning I removed all of my belongings from the site trailer. I then locked it up. Them a "goodbye and UCKU very much" message, and tossed the keys into a retention pond. I got a call 4 hours later from the company I now work for, and 8 days later I had moved to a new state for twice the salary and a lot less stress. My mom was in the final stages of cancer and wanted to be around my parents as much as possible. Tried to ask for leave by FMLA and the sheriff-in-chief basically said that's life and declined the leave plan. I quit and found another job and was able to hobby a good final 6 months with her before Shepist. She was a psychopathic narcissist. I knew she was plotting to leave her husband. Because I found Iton a numbered to-do list on top of her desk. I was floored that she would leave it where her husband could see it was a home office in one large room. I took a photo. She proceeded to harass and gaslight her, who took off one night and slept in a parking lot. When he returned the next day, she said, "You left me, so it's over." After she royally screwed me over for the umpteenth time, I quit. A few weeks later, I sent the photo to her husband, copied her, and wrote, "For your records," in the subject line. Then I reported her to the IRS. Lost him a big deal with another company by walking away at a critical moment. In fact, I walked right of the arcade across the street. I walked into his office before my shift started, told him, I quit. He says, "You're giving your 2 weeks notice." I said, looking at my watch, "I'm giving my 10 minutes notice." Took the taxi home after being wrongfully dismissed. Tipped the taxi drive $250 on company expense. On my last day at the bowling alley, I sent an email to head office detailing all the hit he'd been up to, but everyone was too afraid to report, Inc. Trying to fire someone when he found out she was pregnant. A big no-no in my country. I heard later that the next day regional manager and a couple of executives turned up for a surprise inspection. He's found in the office, having backayed a 16-year-old female colleague in the corner, screaming at the top of his lungs, with his big red vein throbbing face touching hers. She was distraught and obviously crying her eyes out. Manager was escorted off premises there, and the NAND never heard from again.